All right, and we are live. Welcome to this Friday's Beer and E-commerce live stream. My name is TJ Gamble, and I am the e-commerceaholic. And today we're just going to be talking about building a Magento agency. And so I'm going to have a couple of guests. I'm going to have Alex here. Go ahead and introduce yourself, Alex.
Hey everyone, I'm Alex Schreck. I'm with Salvager out here in Phoenix, Arizona.
And we're going to be joined by Ali from Imagination Media, but Ali is running a little bit behind. So we're going to go ahead and the show must go on. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Today, I'm going to be drinking a little bit of John Emerald, same as last week. I am training for my first 5K, and so I've got a long way to go and not very many weeks left to get there. So I'm trying to stay away from the beer. It's apparently beer is not good for your waistline. If I'd only known this years ago. I've got my ice ball here. See, this is I'm excited about this. I haven't used one of these yet. I bought a bottle of Dewar's, a little gift set that come with the glass and a little ice ball maker. So I'm gonna give you the sound effects here. You know, it broke. I broke my. That's lame. I broke it. Oh well. There's Ali.
What's up, guys?
Hi, Ali.
We're just getting it kicked off.
What's everybody doing today?
Doing good, doing good. I don't think you've met Alex. We've got Alex on the line here as well.
How you doing, Alex? How are you?
Pretty good. How about yourself?
Good. Pleasure meeting you.
So Alex is with Salvager and small Magento agency, trying to get that thing up and off the ground. And I feel like, I'll go ahead and preface this with there are probably better, more successful Magento agencies that Alex could be talking to give him better advice. But we are here and available. So he's going to get the advice we give him, whether it's good or not.
Sounds good. Sounds like a fun time.
Yeah, and we'll just talk about whatever. There may be questions, but why don't you just kind of tell everybody a little bit about Salvager? Let's understand where you're at business wise and what we might could help with.
Yeah, so Salvager started about a year ago. It was started by my dad. He's been working with Magento since 2008. And then in fall this year, I was brought on to do business development and grow the sales and marketing and get this thing lifted off the ground. Fortunately, my dad was able to bring over former clients, so we have a solid baseline to start with. And I'm just starting to immerse myself in the Magento community like this here with you guys and learn about exactly what you've done to be successful and learn from you guys.
Yeah, I mean, that's the hardest part, is having that base from which to build. So it sounds like you've got a head start already. Mm-hmm. Having what I call a hotbed of coals, right? It's like you're building a fire. If you've got a good hotbed of coals, you can throw any wet log on there and it's going to burn. So, when you're first starting an agency, having that stable base, that stability is the most difficult part. And it oftentimes takes people years to get that. So it's good that you're headed in that direction. As far as the community goes, being active in the community is one of the biggest things you can do. And in my opinion, is my business has grown, and we've done a lot of great things since I started getting more active in the Magento community, which is one of the reasons I brought Ali in. He's doing great things in the community as well.
We've built, to a certain degree, I've built a company on the backs of the Magento community, right? From mentors like Philip Jackson, Kalen Jordan, guys like TJ, just meeting, interacting with people in the community, understanding what other peers of mine are doing to be successful. And what I was most surprised by, specifically with the Magento community, was I never really understood that people actually share this information, right? I never understood that, you really want to give somebody all of the answers to the secret sauce, right? And all the ingredients, let's say, to the secret sauce. I always thought that, you kind of keep those things pretty close to the vest, and in terms of what your sales channels are, what your development process is, how you deal with the everyday issues that you're facing. But I learned really quickly with the Magento community, everybody's open to share a wealth of knowledge with you. So you don't necessarily have to go through and make those same mistakes that they already have made for you, right? They'll tell you what to do, what not to do, how to do it. And I've paid very close attention over the last, I'd say, I don't know, 2 years, 2.5 years, to various people in the community, and openly discussing the challenges that I face on an everyday basis, whether it's from acquiring a customer to keeping a customer to delivering a solution to a customer. I've learned all of that primarily from the community at this point.
Yeah, I think the thing about, people being open, you can give somebody your ingredients, you can give them your recipe. They still can't bake your cake, right? You see how I do what I do, but you're going to have to leverage your own strengths. So whatever advice we give you, whatever you learn, you have to figure out how to take your weaknesses and turn them into important thing you can do. For instance, just to give you an example, we are, as I say, strategically located in the middle of nowhere. And so there are not a lot of opportunities around here. There are no developers that have Magento experience around here. So one of the things we absolutely had to do to survive was to offer remote employment. And that, once we embraced it, once we actually started, just kind of making it a part of our culture and not just kind of half-assing it, that has actually been a big part of our success, and the fact that we can go out and get talent regardless of where they are.
Yeah, that's I know that's been a challenge for my dad Jurgen in the past, is finding talent when he needs it, and I think he's growing a lot more open to having someone remote as well. He's always had a passion of building a team and a company that's all together, but finding real good Magento developers locally I've found has been a challenge for sure. Not just in Alabama.
Well, you're going to have to train them. A couple of things on what you mentioned there. One thing you don't want to do as an agency owner is get attached to some romantic idea of what you eventually think that agency is going to look like. You obviously need to have a vision, but you need to be open to other ideas. And I've seen a lot of people kill their company because they're romantically tied to this vision of a big, huge, nice office and, all of the things that come with being an agency owner and all of these people. And when they needed to outsource, they weren't willing to do that. So, it's good to have a vision, but don't let that vision become your anchor. And as far as remote employees, you can train Magento developers. This is a complex platform, but and I got DJ just kind of checking the fridge in the background here. So this is a working office. But you can train developers, and if you grow slow, and it's always better to grow slow and stable, then you can train people. And some of the best employees you'll ever have are people that you have trained on your process, and they don't come in with their own understanding and expectations and processes. But that is just a much slower path. It's the better path. It's the more stable path. But sometimes you're going to need 2 or 3 developers now that know what they're talking about. And how do you do that if you can't offer remote?
for us, I hired my first developer in the hallways at Imagine a few years back, right? So I was a one-man team for an extended period of time and had been talking to some peers of mine and buddies of mine that I was looking to hire my first full-time developer. I was always afraid of taking on, a salary of a Magento developer. And somebody introduced me to a guy named Joe in the hallway and said, "Hey, this guy, Joe over here, he's looking for a job." We hired Joe. Joe worked remote for a little while and then eventually, moved to South Florida and works out of the office now. We're partially a remote company, but for us, as TJ said, we, got into the habit of trying to have 1 to 2 junior developers at a time on staff that were constantly training, right? That start with from our support ticketing system and then kind of work their way up from there. And for us, that's been, probably the most stable path of a Magento developer, right? Where we find them and then train them in-house, which is no easy task on its own. Let me tell you, I failed at it many times and I'm still pretty sure I'm failing at it, but I'm failing at it maybe a little bit better than I was before. But finding a PHP developer or finding any developer and training them on Magento is definitely the best way to go.
So earlier you had mentioned that you learned a lot from the community about acquiring clients and versus keeping clients. One thing that we've been really good at is keeping clients, but it's having a steady pipeline and acquiring clients on a regular basis that has been my biggest challenge. So what are some of the things that you did when you were maybe just like you said that you were on your own at first, when you were on your own, what were some of the things you did to keep a steady pipeline with, complex projects like Magento projects?
So one thing that's probably a little bit different between us and Jamerson is how we go about acquiring customers. So for me, the way we've kind of built our sales funnel and our customer acquisition model is based on strategic partnerships with other platforms, right? Specifically for us, it's point of sale platforms. We, from day one, originally it was Microsoft RMS and starting to build relationships with all the various Microsoft RMS vendors that I could find that needed a Microsoft RMS to Magento integration. And that integration was kind of an entry into other things such as site builds, site maintenance, rebuilds, things of that nature. Also, maybe customers a lot of times were RMS customers and on a platform that didn't have an RMS integration, and we had a basic integration to Magento where we could sell them a small site on Magento at relatively low cost and get them up and running with an RMS integration. And I've kind of continued to follow that same path where we have now other strategic relationships with other bigger point of sale companies where we've got integrations to them, and that's how we kind of pull in most of our business, strategic partnerships with other technology verticals. And we also over time have started to realize what we're good at in terms of the actual e-commerce vertical as well, right? Where we realize all of a sudden where we kind of excel at the fashion vertical, right? And we suffer in other areas where we won't understand the business, don't understand the product as strong as we understand the fashion vertical, where we have various mechanisms in place already for the fashion vertical. So we've figured out where our strengths are and just focused on those strengths and building a business around those strengths, as opposed to just trying to figure out how we can do a little bit of everything.
Yeah, it's funny because Ali says it's different than how we do it, but it's exactly how we got here, in that we did exactly the same thing. One of our first big partnerships was with a company that sold Retail Pro point of sale systems, and they had Like, it wasn't easy to connect to, and they had the retail pro side of the connector, and we wrote the Magento side of the connector. But as a small agency, it's all about partnerships. What I would do, especially if you're a one-man shop, a two-man shop, a five-man shop, you should focus on the development side of things, or if you're a developer, and leave the other stuff to other people if you can. Now, it's obviously you need to be able to implement or create a design if you get a project that needs it. But what I would do, and what I did, is I went to graphic design agencies, especially locally, but we worked our way up the ladder to some of the biggest design and marketing firms in the country. Start letting them know, start running in their circles, start trying to find out how to get in touch with them, and make sure they understand that you are a reliable source of Magento talent, and that when they have a Magento project, I don't white label anymore. We used to do some stuff like that, but just make sure that they know that you can be a partner to them. And when they come across a Magento project, that you are top of mind for them reaching out. And then if you can find some other platforms that you excel at, like a point of sale system or anything else that needs integration. Point of sale system's great. That's kind of the de facto first partnership, in that they usually are dealing with a lot of merchants that don't know anything about doing e-commerce. And not always, but they get a lot of those guys. And so you can really be the guide no matter what level you're on. As long as you know something about e-commerce, you usually know more than those merchants. And then you kind of, like Ali said, you're not defined by the projects you take, you're defined on. So you want to start figuring out what projects you're really good at. And we found out that we're the opposite of Ali, in that fashion is not our strong suit. We do really well with other things. We do really well with manufacturers of goods, and things that have a little more complexity in moving data. But you look at me, fashion is not my thing, obviously. So it's it's about finding the right partnerships to get enough. It's another phrase I use all the time, is that you don't know what spark is going to start a fire. So you want to be hustling constantly to throw sparks. And by sparks, I mean, working potential opportunities. I've got opportunities that I thought had no chance whatsoever, and I don't hear from them for 2 years, and then they pop up, and now they're ready to talk about their e-commerce. And because I planted that seed, so many years ago, we're the only agency they're talking to. So it's just about hustle and trying to diversify where you're getting leads from. Never have all your eggs in one basket.
To add to that, as far as your partnerships are concerned, you have to be persistent, and you have to be front and center, right? It's out of sight, out of mind. So you have to be in constant communication with all of your different partner channels, and making sure that they understand, as embarrassing as it might be, everything that you've accomplished, everything that you've done, what you're capable of, and constantly reminding them, whether it's handing them a sell sheet of something that shows them some of the strengths that you might have and some of the aspects of e-commerce that you might specialize in, or constantly, sending them a quick chat, or, taking them out to grab a beer and telling them what you're working on and what your aspirations are, whatever the case might be. You constantly have to be front and center, and you have to be persistent. It's not very easy. There's sometimes, a lot of times, there's already going to be a partner that they're working with, that they're comfortable with. Maybe that partner is doing a terrible job, but all the mechanisms for that terrible job are already in place, and people don't necessarily like change. So you have to be persistent. Just because they told you no today does not mean that they're going to tell you no tomorrow. One thing about me, and even TJ, and this is kind of how me and TJ met, is we both were stalking Ben Marks for about a month to 2 months, and just following him around, and just stayed persistent after him, trying to get into the Magento partner program. Hey, what do I need to do to become a partner? What does it take to become a partner? How can I become a partner? And just constantly staying after it. And eventually it bears fruit, believe it or not. It might be a little bit disheartening. I know for me, it was a little bit slow going and disheartening at first. But as TJ said, you never know when you're going to start a fire.
So what do the conversations look like that you're having with someone that would be a potential strategic partner, like you guys are talking about?
Ask them what their needs are, where their gaps are, what their pain points are, that they're suffering from, and try to see how you can help them, fill those gaps or help them alleviate those pain points or do a better job. There might be a point of sale company that's an up and coming point of sale company, or it doesn't necessarily even have to be an open point of sale. It can be an ERP, it can be a warehouse management system. There's a ton of platforms that are out there that are always looking for partners that can help them integrate with other platforms. The power for a lot of these companies, whether it's a WMS, an ERP, a POS, comes from having integrations to other platforms, right? So maybe this company's got a great integration to Shopify, or maybe they've got a great integration to BigCommerce. Okay, what about Magento? How can we help you build an integration to Magento and open up this whole other market for you that might not exist, right? This whole other sales channel for this point of sale company, where maybe they've already got Magento sites that are in place, and they might not actually consider this company because they don't have a Magento integration, right? Things like that can go a long way. That's my model. There's other companies out there that have other customer acquisition models that are completely different to mine. That's what I found works for me, and that's kind of what I've stayed true to. One of the other things that sounds awkward, but you can't necessarily be afraid of, is partnering with other agencies. I mean, if I told you the amount of work that I've actually got from other agencies that were either too busy, or in the early goings, the job was too small or wasn't a good fit for them, and they passed it off to me based on a relationship I have built. I mean, I think I've probably closed 2 deals just from TJ, right? So those strategic partnerships and relationships can go a long way as well.
I need those projects back, Ali. I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to pull those back. I wanted to get to a few questions. We're having some awesome things going on in the chat here. Let's see. First of all, Rodrigo gave us a hard time because this is the Beer in E-commerce live stream and no one is drinking beer. Sorry about that. As I said at the top of this broadcast, I am trying to cut my calories to train for a 5K. And, when you're as big as I am, the biggest thing you can do to run a 5K is to cut yourself in half. And so I'm working on that. And this is part of that strategy. So, this is a bring your own alcohol event. The other guys, it is what it is. Maybe I need to change the name. I'll consider that. But the first question Joe Williams asked, is it better to bill clients hourly for new site builds or take the risk of quoting projects? Okay. And I'll take this first, and then I'll let you kind of follow up on it, Ali. And then, of course, Alex, feel free to chime in with any of these questions. So for us, it varies, and it varies a couple of ways. Most of the time, if someone is coming to us with a project rescue, if it's already in the works and somebody's already screwed it up, we're going to have to just bill that by the hour moving forward. Other than that scenario, if it is a brand new website, a brand new build, typically what we're going to do is we're going to ask for a deposit up front. And we used to, when we were smaller, get a small deposit up front, and then we would bill you at the beginning of the project until that retainer was exhausted, and then you would get a bill every 2 weeks. We've since changed to get a larger deposit that is actually going to be paid back at the end of the project. Typically, when the larger the projects are, the bigger projects we do, there's just a big spool up period at the beginning of the project. And so it really causes some cash flow problems having a small deposit or just kind of drip billing them. And so we're typically going to going to do that method, right? Start off with a deposit and then bill them by the hour as we go through a project. Now, we're almost always time and materials. We do quote the project. We do give them an estimate of what we think it's going to take, but we do not do fixed bid projects. That is just a recipe for disaster. Do not do it unless you have no other choice. I mean, do what you got to do to stay in business. But if you can avoid it, avoid fixed bids. You got something on that, Ali?
Yeah, so we started strictly with fixed bid projects, and in the last, I don't know, maybe 6 months to a year, we're slowly trying to wean ourselves off of fixed bid projects. As TJ said, it's almost impossible to estimate anything in the development world anymore. Specifically, when you're dealing with customizations to Magento, right, where no matter how well defined the client's requirements are, they're never 100% perfect. No matter how well you think you understand the project, it's never 100% perfect. And time and materials billing is definitely long-term the proper way for us to build projects, which is what we're trying to do on every project moving forward. It's not as easy as it sounds to convince the customer that time and materials is also beneficial to them, as opposed to a fixed bid project where we might have to pad it specifically because of the unknown. And we're still trying to learn how we actually sell clients on fixed bid, on time and materials as opposed to fixed bid. But long term, if we want to continue to grow fixed bid, time and materials definitely is where it's at.
What are y'all doing currently, Alex, as far as builds and billing?
So right now, in the past before Salvager, we were doing a small retainer and then hourly afterwards. Now, if we're doing a new build or a larger project, we do a retainer at a higher rate, and then once that project is done, we lower that retainer to an ongoing retainer, and then anything that month that's above that retainer, we bill hourly. We bill the overages.
We have the same model for the most part. We have some sort of support engagement with the client. They have X amount of hours per month at X amount of dollars and X amount of value added services. And, anything over that is billed at X amount of dollars. So.
Yeah, in the chat, Brooklyn Heritage mentions that I find it's important to find a structure where you can manage the expectations. Time and materials, maybe with a not to exceed, is something we have tried. Now, the not to exceed is interesting. I like the concept, and the problem you have is that if you're going to fix bid it, or if you're going to not to exceed it, you need to bid it a little high for unknowns. And especially if you're using an agile-ish process. I don't know if anybody's actually using agile, but if you're doing sprints that the client's involved in and they can change things, then you've got to have some flexibility. And if you're bidding a little high to cover the not to exceed, how many projects, especially in a competitive bid situation, how many projects do you lose to the guy that's bidding it low because he's going to do it time and materials? Here's a very structured, it's just like someone asked me the other day for kind of an outline, a skeleton of what does a Magento build for this amount of money look for, and it looked like, and it was a moderate amount of money, a decent budget, a healthy budget for a really small Magento merchant. And the problem is that you can give a skeleton and say, at this budget, this is what you get, but the client will never, ever, 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 ever understand going into that project that means no changes. And we've done a lot of talking and a lot of conversations around the construction model to where you break even on the project and you make money on change orders. I'm interested in that model and I want to study it more. But that's definitely an interesting perspective, and the not to exceed is something I don't think we're really looking to try. unless it's a very small project. If I jump into a $200,000 not to exceed project, that can very quickly turn into a $400,000 project that puts me out of business. Anything else you wanted to add on that? We've got a couple of other questions here.
No, I think you nailed it on the head. It's difficult. It hasn't been easy for me to always sell time and materials, right? Most of our clients insist on having some sort of, even if it's time and materials, some sort of ballpark numbers. So in some cases, we do try having, a cap where, this is the maximum amount of time, maximum spend that we can have on this project. Now, as far as, agile development, we usually do scope change, right? So on our fixed bid project, if the customer does come back and try to change something on that fixed bid, we try to have as well-defined SOW as we possibly can. And if they want to change something, we'll create a change request and we'll quote that out separately. But all in all, at the end of the day, time and materials is definitely the way to go.
Absolutely. And, we definitely quote. You've got to quote projects for sure. You've got to give them an estimate. There's no way you're going to win a bid if you're just like, I don't know what it's going to cost, but we'll bill you by the hour. I've tried that. It doesn't usually work. I usually try that on people we don't want to do their website. All right. So Matthias, I apologize, Matthias, if I am mispronouncing your name. The chat is way over there in my monitor, and I'm terrible with names anyway. So I think that's right. But Matthias asked questions, and this is a little long. He went through several here, but I'll try to read them all. He says he's doing a great job on the technical side. Like he says very, very deeply technical. Like he is legit. And he's been realizing that he's also has an inclination toward management leadership. And he's wondering if he should take that as a sign of whether he should transition his career towards opening a consulting company or even an agency in order to scale up, delegate more and more projects. And as a tech guy, which critical factors should I consider or should I be advised of? Additionally, I've been working remotely for 3 years, and it's such a great plus to be able to find talents all over and not just in the local geo and time zone. So the question basically boils down to he's a technical developer, a solid technical Magento developer, which are the hardest people to find. And he's wondering, he's looking forward to management and what he can do. So again, I'll go first and then you guys chime in if you have anything to add. What I would do in your scenario is if you're freelancing and you're getting work, I would start trying to find merchants that I could handle and service myself. And then once I have a stable base of those merchants that I am doing their development and I've got, some decent retainers with them to do ongoing development and steering their project, then, or even it may be even agencies and some partnerships that are sending you work, then I would go hire a remote developer to fill in and do some of that work to expand my capacity. And I would slowly start doing that. Now, what you're going to want to do is keep overhead low. You're not going to be able to immediately step out and not be a developer because that gets really expensive and really risky when you don't have that stable base of customer retainers. And so you slowly start adding developers as you expand your capacity. And eventually, when you've got enough of them to cover your overhead and to actually pay you, then you can stop developing, stop leading that team, and start focusing on working on your business, not at your business. Now, you better like doing a lot more than just leadership. You better like accounting. You better like hiring and firing people and liking it, but you better be able to do it. You better like sales. You better like a lot of the aspects of building a business and not just leading a team, because it's not right for everybody. It is very, very stressful. Owning an agency is difficult. It's stressful. There's a ton of competition out there. You're going to have good days and bad days. You're going to have good quarters and bad quarters, good years and bad years. And so you have to love the possibilities of what you're trying to build. You have to have ideals beyond just making money, or sooner or later it's going to get tough enough and you're going to give up on it. So start small, keep overhead low, and make sure you've got an overall vision of building something bigger than just yourself. Any thoughts on that, Ali or Alex?
I think you nailed it on the head, as far as where you want to start and how you want to end up with what you would call an actual agency. But part of what Matthews asked is, should it be a sign of transitioning his career towards consulting? It sounds to me more like he should be transitioning his career towards maybe becoming a technical consultant. There's a lot of big Magento customers out there that are having a little bit of trouble internally managing the project or managing the agency that they're working with, or understanding if the agency is actually delivering what they're promising that they're delivering. And, I think there is some room there for, TJ probably doesn't like this in a lot of other agencies, but having a third-party consultant come in there on behalf of the client to help manage the project or manage the technical part of the project, right? If you have the technical acumen to do that, which Matthews obviously does, that's definitely a possibility as well.
Yeah, that's I definitely don't agree with any of that. You do. There's a lot of people in the Magento space that have built great little businesses of just themselves, and they're the expert in this, right? I mean, you've got Talesh, the Magento security expert, and he's living in Jeeps and bouncing all around the world and living a great lifestyle. But he's not really trying at this point to grow that beyond himself, as far as I know. So there's just a lot goes into it, and it's not always more money. Lots of times, getting this business, growing this business, I made a lot more money when it was just me or me and one freelancer working with me than I did for a few years after I started trying to grow it, because I had so much overhead of me not doing development and me actually working on getting the business in shape. We've got one other question here in the chats. By the way, if you're watching this, we need 4 subscribers to hit that nice 250 number. Why don't you just go ahead and tap that button? Just tap it. Hit the notification bell while you're at it. Hopefully, we're providing some sort of value here. But we've got Dave Moore in the chat, and he has asked, how do you balance billable time with developer education? And that is a wonderful, complex problem that is always an issue. For us, it's not simple. It's not a simple problem, and I'm not going to claim to be the expert in having that answered, because it's something we still work on. We're working on improving right now, in that you have to be committed to education, but you also have to have the money to be able to educate your developers. And if they're not focused on billable time, well, then you're not going to have the money to keep in business and have them work on education. So what you have to do is have a healthy rate. Make sure you've got a healthy rate, and a healthy rate varies depending on what level of project you're doing, what size project you're doing. But in theory, the more educated and better your developers are, the higher you can inch that rate up. So work on making sure you've got a healthy rate. Make sure you're profitable, keeping overhead low, so that money is going hopefully into a bank account. And once you have a stable base of customers, you're steady, you've got a decent cash flow going, then you have to make sure it's not all about money. It's like I mentioned earlier, it can't be all about money. When we go in and we talk about, selling something to a customer, money is 4th on our list of important factors. Now, obviously, we have to get paid. We would like to stay in business. That's kind of important to what we do. But it can't be the first thing you're worried about. So once you've got it to where you're making some money, you have to invest that money in your people. And that investment will pay off in better projects, more notoriety, a higher billable rate, hopefully, eventually. So just think of it as an investment once you've got some stability. What are your thoughts on that, Ali and Alex? What you got?
For me, in the early going, it wasn't something that we had any focus on at all. And then I quickly realized that it's something that we had to really carefully pay attention to, right? Where for us, our developers weren't going to sharpen their sword on their own. They needed some sort of assistance to do it, whether that was, peer-to-peer internally, where as they say, iron sharpens iron, where one person is teaching another and sharing, what they know with the other developer. It became abundantly clear to us early going that it was something that was going to be very important, not just because you can get a higher rate for more experienced developers, but also because the more experienced your developer is, the more educated your developer is, the less time that most likely it's going to take for him to complete a particular task. The less of the it lessens the likelihood that he's going to make a mistake and you're going to have to come in and have another senior developer or lead developer refactor all of his code. Less likely that he's going to make a major mistake that might cost you with the client, directly or indirectly, based on time and things of that nature. So it became really clear to us that we needed to invest in it, which we do pretty well with some of the conferences that we strategically pick, like Mage Titans, some of the conferences that you have online. There's one that Philip and I know Cal Evans are involved with. I can't remember the name right now for some strange reason. It's called Mage something. You know what I'm talking about, TJ?
Nomad Mage?
Nomad Mage, there you go.
Yeah.
We invest in Nomad Mage. We invest in the local meetups and people sharing information at the local meetups, and also spend some time internally trying to educate each other.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. It's not just about it is about a higher hourly rate, but what goes with that is efficiency. And can you now do a project that used to take you 1,000 hours in 500 hours because your developers are more educated, more experienced? You have less time that you end up comping to a client because someone messed up or took 30 hours to do a 10-hour task. So there's a lot of benefit to it. Mark Schust in the chat here, who is a tech lead at Jamerson, architect, he mentions, typically the 80-20 rule, where you want them 80% billable, 20% training. There's always something to learn. There's always a new framework, a new technology, a new tool. There's always something to get better at, and you have to be educating your team or you're going to fall behind. It's always about getting better.
Is actually the perfect example. So our lead developer last week made all of our developers actually pause for an hour and watch that live stream on Docker, right? So that's actually a perfect example where we're learning from other people in the community. It's not necessarily great for me as an agency owner for my entire company or all of our developers to pause for an hour to watch a live stream, but there's something to gain from that, right? So you're hoping that the benefits outweigh the time in the long term.
TJ, you said that price is fourth on your list in conversation with potential customers. What are the first three?
Well, it's not necessarily the fourth in the conversation, but it's really about our core values and what are we interested in when we're talking to prospects, when we're taking on clients. Number one is, can we provide value? Can we actually help this merchant? Because we got one right now we've been talking to that it's a good bit of money, but we would provide no value, and so it would not be an ideal fit, because there are other people that might provide value there. It's not the right type of arrangement. We would not be in control of the project. We would basically be in a staff augmentation role, and that's just not something that we can control and that we do a good job of. So provide value, number one. Number two, do good work. You always want to be able to do good work. And number three, you want happy customers. And number four, we want to make money, in that order, because sooner or later, you're going to have to sacrifice one of those to make one of the other one happen. And you have to make sure you understand your values and the order of those. And I have never seen a company be successful that has money at the top of that list. Let's see. Keep your questions coming. You know, I think we've touched on all of the questions in the chat. If you have any more, definitely keep them coming. Dave says thanks. I don't know if you guys are in the chat there. But we're here, you know, we're talking about agency building. We're an open book. I'll answer any question I can, as long as I don't have to talk about a particular customer. But you know, they may not enjoy that. But we're here to help. We can talk about this. We can talk about whatever. The NCAA bracket, you know, mine's already busted all to hell. But, you know, it is what it is. It's only day 2.
I went to ASU, so I had to choose U of A losing in the first round, and that worked out quite well for me.
Yeah, that was a disaster. That's one of the ones I missed. I didn't see that one coming.
Sometimes when you have an emotional attachment to something, it works out for you.
Well, see, the thing is I love basketball. I don't get to watch a lot of college basketball. I'm an Auburn grad. I watch Auburn stuff, but I don't get to watch pretty much anybody else. So I don't know anything about the other teams. And I give myself 3 minutes to fill out a bracket. And so I pull it up. I've got 3 minutes, no research. What feels right as I go through. It's a few. Do what?
You're like my wife. When you're betting on the horses, you just pick the name of the horse that you like the most.
Well, you know, I'll get a feel, or maybe I've heard something, or like you know, it was hard picking Auburn to win because I know their biggest shot blocker has gotten hurt a few games ago, and they've not been real good since that guy got hurt. So I know they might get by this first round, they might not, but after that, it's going to be really tough for them. I picked them anyway to go a couple of rounds in. But, you know, there's a few things there that's like, yeah, okay, you know, I probably would get this right because I know this team kind of sucks because Auburn played them. But anyway, I think we may have some new questions here in the chat. Brooklyn Heritage, how do you find working with owners versus e-commerce managers versus CTOs versus marketing people? It depends on what services you are providing. I don't know if there's any particular insight there. Title is oftentimes relative, like an e-commerce manager sometimes is a marketing manager. Owner, if you're working with the owner, usually that's a smaller company. I don't know if, you know, if we've, I'm trying to think of a project we've done in the last couple of years to where outside of the sales cycle, we were dealing with the owner day to day. Usually they may pop in, they may be slightly involved, but they're not responsible for the project. I like working with owners because the higher level up you can get, if you can get to a CTO, you can get to an owner, a CEO. If they're involved in the project, they're about getting shit done. And so if there's a question, there's a problem, they're the person to rectify that situation, and you don't have to jump through as many hoops. E-commerce managers, marketing managers, those guys may or may not have the authority. And you usually, if you're working with them, you don't usually have direct access to a higher up, which, you know, can add a little bit of overhead, but at the same time, their job's on the line when it comes to that project. So they, you know, they're a little more cautious. They're usually a little more careful through the sales cycle, and they feel the pressure. and they really want that project to be successful typically. Do you see any real differences between those, Ali?
No, not necessarily. We also haven't dealt much with any owners in the last year and a half. For the most part, it's predominantly been an e-commerce manager or some sort of e-commerce manager internally. Marketing teams seem to be a pain, specifically for us, because in the fashion vertical, it's always form over function, or for developers, it's always function over form. So there's some, sometimes you might butt heads there, but usually we can work it out. It hasn't been a problem for us. I haven't dealt with very many CTOs for the most part. I don't know, I know there are some companies that have CTOs, but normally when you see a company that has a CTO, they'll have an e-commerce manager in place unless the CTO is acting as both.
Yeah, B2C business is typically going to be on the marketing side of B2B. You start doing B2B, you'll run into CTOs a little more frequently.
So I guess I need to start sharpening my B2B skills.
No, just don't worry about it. You get those leads, you just forward them to me. We'll be fine. No problem. I'll keep sending fashion stuff your way.
Sounds good. I'll be right.
What about you, Alex? Have you seen any, with the projects you guys are working on, do you see a mix of different roles there? And is there any difference for you?
Most of the companies we work with, we are in conversations with the owners. So we might be working with some smaller clients than you guys, and that might be why. But for the most part, we're the owners of the clients of the clients we're working with are really in tune with what's going on with their Magento business.
Okay. Yeah, it's probably a lot to do with overall size of the merchant, which, that's kind of where we come from. That's why I was trying to think the last 2 years before that, just about everybody we were dealing with was an owner of the business. So that's not a concern. Looks like, did we lose Ali? He looked like he stepped out for a minute. So let's see, what else have we got here? Have you had any luck keeping developers longer than 3 to 5 years? If so, what do you do to make that happen? In all honesty, Dave, I don't know if anybody on this cast is really going to be able to speak to that. Typically, developers do not stay in one job 3 to 5 years. That's just how that is. They're going to grow. They're going to want something different. They get tired of building the same websites, of doing the same projects. We've been in business for 18, 19 years, but I've really only been trying to grow this business for about 6. So we do have employee number 1 who's sitting over there, Will French. He was the first W-2 employee I hired. He's been here 6 years. I think it's even tougher with remote because there are just other options. Having them local is possible, but I would feel like, just in theory, the only way to get that kind of tenure from most developers is if you are constantly providing opportunities for growth and for them to move into different roles. They want to go from a junior to a senior to a manager to something, but eventually they're going to hit the limit of what you can provide. All I can say to you is to make sure, as an agency owner, and I run into this a lot with agencies, just talking to them, make sure as an agency owner that you are doing everything you can do to support the career aspirations of your crew, whether that is at your business or not at your business. Don't think that your employees owe you something, that just because you hired them and you've invested in them and you've trained them, that they owe you something. They don't owe you anything. They owe themselves. They need to take care of themselves, their mental health, their career, their family. And so, and I'm not implying that you're doing that, and your question doesn't imply that you're doing that. But if you do that, if you are looking out for your employees' best interests, then you will keep them as long as makes sense. And when they are ready to move forward, fully support them in that as well. Because what that does is that gives them the opportunity, if that other thing doesn't work out, they can come back, or you can attract the best talent by having that open mindset. Nobody wants to be in an organization where they feel like they're trapped. And when they do, they leave. So provide them the best opportunities you can. And when it doesn't work out, wish them well, add them, keep them on your Christmas card list. I don't know if you heard the question, Ali. Did you?
I did. How to keep rock solid developers, or how to keep developers?
Well, 3 to 5 years, more than that 3 to 5 year span. And I prefaced it with, I don't know if either of us, have any experience with that. I do have Will, who's been here for 6 years now, and Gary has been here for 3 or so, I think. So it's we don't have a ton of experience with that, but we've been growing and we've been really adding capabilities, and a lot of our developers that would have been here that long were not able to cut it in a Magento enterprise environment. So they just kind of fell by the wayside years ago. So hopefully I added something to that conversation, but let's see. I'm going through the other questions here. Matthias has given me a thumbs up on the exercises. I have been killing the gym. Let me tell you, I'm gonna give you a tip real quick. If you want to know how to lose 15 pounds in 13 days, number one, start off really heavy. Number two, go to the gym every damn day. And number three, don't eat much. Number four, get rid of the beer. Okay, that's pretty much it. It's simple. It's a simple recipe. It's a good cake, but it's a simple recipe.
That's awesome to hear.
So I'm fully committed to Imagine. In high school, I was a runner. We didn't have any sort of formal running teams, but I was a runner. I could run all day. I'd run 4 miles basketball practice. I'd go to basketball practice. I'd run sprints afterwards. I would run 4 miles when we had an organized run. I would run 4 miles, and then I would get to the finish line, and I would have 15 or 20 minutes to take a nap before anyone else finished. I was in Boy Scouts for about 2 months before I realized I didn't like Boy Scouts, and this guy duped me into doing like a little triathlon, and it was swim a mile, bike a mile, run a mile. And I drew like some archery contest, and he drew, and he really did not want to do this triathlon. So they had at their little concession stand, they had one of these like really big frozen drinks. It was like a $5 freaking frozen drink. And he's like, I'll buy you one of those. I said, okay, I'll do it. So I decided to swim and do the triathlon, and I'm swimming, and I almost drowned because I can't swim worth crap. Like, I stay afloat, but I basically dog paddled a mile. I'm the last guy out of the swimming pool, or it wasn't even a pool, it was a pond. I'm the last guy out of the pond, and I caught half the people on the bike, and I finished third in the overall because I caught the rest of them while running. So I could run. Now, I haven't run since high school. I've been sitting at a desk very much like this, consuming things that I should not be consuming at quantities that should not be partaken of. So let's see how fast I can rectify that situation. I'm going to do all I can at the 5K at Imagine. I don't know how fast that'll be. I may walk half of it, but it's just a start, right? It's a change in lifestyle. So I'm committed to it. We'll see where it goes.
I was a kinesiology major for my undergrad, and one thing that's really undervalued when it comes to your health and fitness is not just your weight and appearance, but it's also what's done for you mentally. Once you start becoming more active, you'll notice that mentally you'll be more productive, you'll be sharper, and it's just a domino effect from there. A lot of other things start improving in your life when you start working out.
Yeah, I agree. You know, I don't have a whole lot to add to that, but it's, you know, definitely helps my stress level a little bit, so that's good.
Mm-hmm.
You gonna run it with me there, Ali?
Yeah, I ran last year. I'm gonna walk. My knee can only take so much, you know. But I've
Yeah.
been in the gym every day ever since my knee injury, and ever since I could finally walk properly again. You know, it's hard. It's hard to get back to it, but you know, I'm slowly shedding all the weight from that knee injury and quitting smoking too. I'm gonna stick with it. You know, as Alex said, you definitely feel sharper. I'm at the point now where when I don't work out, I actually can tell. You know, my anxiety level is a little bit higher. You know, I'm a little bit more anxious than I normally am, and so it definitely makes a difference in your mental health as well. You know, that physical activity kind of, for me, it helps me alleviate some of the stress and you know, works.
Yeah. So tying that back to running an agency, you know, you're going to have a lot on your plate, a lot on your mind. Don't forget to take care of yourself. That's the one thing I did not do for the last 18 years, and now I'm a restoration project. So let's see. We've got some more questions here. Matthews that said, I mentioned it's extremely hard to find good local developers, even harder to find ninjas. What about remote work? What about office in Eastern Europe? We're all remote. We're a fully remote organization. I do have DJ who is doing some video editing for me here in the office. Emma is a video editing intern as well. She's not here today, spring break. And Will French works here. So we've got a few people in the office, but the rest of our team is all across the U.S., all across the world. I mean, we do have one outside the U.S. right now. We went more South America, just time zones. We haven't dealt with the whole you know, having a team overnight. I'm not sure how that's going to work for us. Not saying it won't ever happen or that we're not open to it. I know a lot of companies that have been very successful with it. I feel like if I hire a bunch of people in Eastern Europe and fire up an office, maybe that'll give me an excuse to spend half the year over in Eastern Europe and write it off on taxes. But you know, I'm always looking for something. But your team is remote. You've got a remote team there as well, Ali, right?
We listen. We have an office in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and I've never even been to Brazil before. So yeah, we have an office in Sao Paulo. We have four of our developers are based out of Brazil. Igor, Rafael, Luis, and Anderson. You know, it works well for us. The time zone is fairly close. During this time of the year with daylight savings, I think it's an hour difference. And, you know, we fly our guys in and out, you know, every other few months where they come in, they spend, you know, a month over here in South Florida at a time. All of our guys from Brazil are actually going to be here for the full month of April and go to Imagine with us and then go back to Brazil, then come back through. So we cycle them in and out as well. So they're not always working out of Sao Paulo. They're actually coming in, working out of Miami as well in the office. That's something that we found works really well for us, where if I've kind of figured out a way where I can have my guys come in for a month at a time with the understanding that they need to still fend for themselves while they're here, just like they would when they're in Brazil. And it works. It works for us.
Matthias is inviting us to Rio, by the way.
Yeah.
Well, he's inviting you to Rio.
All my guys tell me that Rio is the place that I shouldn't go.
They're saying don't go to Rio.
They're saying don't go to Rio. They're saying come to Sao Paulo. Don't go to Rio.
Well, that's like flying all these people in and having them stay at Vegas, right? Like, oh, come see the U.S. Yeah, the conference is in Vegas.
Yes, that's not Vegas. Well, listen. So the first time we brought over some of our developers from Brazil, we brought them to Miami, and they were very confused because everybody spoke Portuguese in Miami for the most part, right? You have a huge Latin population that speaks Spanish, and then you have a huge Brazilian population that speaks Portuguese. And they were really confused by it. They didn't know what to think. They're like, well, I don't really feel like I left Brazil. And then we landed in Austin, Texas for Mage Titans, and they're like, oh, this is what the United States looks like.
Now we get it.
Now we get it.
Now we get it.
I mean, they're a little confused by the taco bar in the middle of the bar. But other than that, we had a good time.
So keep your questions coming. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. If as questions come in, we'll try to get to them. Otherwise, Alex, you've got us here. We've been on an hour, which is not a hard limit. But we're, like I said, we're an open book, man. Anything you want to know, what have you got?
When it comes to the community and getting involved in the community, where would you start right now? I'm sure things have changed a little bit since when you guys started at the size that Salvager is at right now. If you were Salvager's size right now, where in the community would you start to get involved?
Define your local Magento meetup.
Yeah, there's a few places. If you don't have a local Magento meetup, start one. Plant a flag. Where are you located? You're in Arizona, right?
Yeah, Phoenix.
Phoenix. Okay. So there should be a Phoenix, or if there's some other city around, what I would do is go to LinkedIn, search the major cities in Arizona, and see what kind of Magento talent's there.
Yeah, there are some Magento meetups out here.
Okay. So make sure if it's not active, see if you can make it more active. If it doesn't exist, create it. If it's active, then start going to it. That's number one. Number two, try to attend every event you can for at least a year. And by every event, I mean every event in the U.S. You've got Mage Titans in Austin, Texas. Shouldn't be too far from you. You've got Imagine in Vegas, which is not terribly far away. You've got Meet Magento in New York, which that's a little further. But make sure you go to those online. Your dad, your techs, have them participate in Stack Exchange. It does not take a lot of effort to actually show some fruits there. I would participate in Stack Exchange, spend a little bit of time giving answers. I would participate in the Magento forums giving answers. From your perspective, if you're doing sales, I would plug in real hard on Twitter and make sure you start following everybody that mentions Magento or talks about Magento on Twitter. That's usually a real big place. There's a few Slack groups if you have technical questions, but most of the Magento community, the active Magento community members, are technical. And so technical topics do seem to excite them a little more. But, there are opportunities for someone that is not a Magento developer to stand out. I mean, hell, what we're doing here is not technical. I am a Magento developer. I can talk tech, although I can't talk Magento 2 tech too deeply because I haven't really dealt with it myself because I quit developing before we moved to Magento 2. But, do that and find a way to stand out. Like I was looking and I'm like, there's not any really great non-technical video content out there. It is all how to do this or how to edit that, or here's how you code that. And so, figure out a way to stand out in the community once you figure out, your thread of where you're going to actively participate.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed the same thing, that within the Magento community, it's very technical, and it's tough for me to participate in that because when it comes to Magento, I'm not really technical at all.
So, I mean, I don't know necessarily if you need to have a fear of that, right? A lot of the Magento meetups locally are not necessarily geared towards the technical, at least not the South Florida Magento meetup, which is why I say that's the best meetup in the country. The South Florida Magento meetup is essentially anybody, right? You could be a project manager, you could be a merchant, you can be a developer, you can be anybody, right? It can be technical in nature if you want it to be. It can be as simplistic as you want it to be. And everybody's an open book, right? And we try to have content for all technical levels, right? But as a whole, you want to engage with people that are discussing e-commerce because you're in the business of e-commerce. One of the best events that you can go to by far, in my opinion, it's a little bit intimidating at first, is Magento Imagine. right? Magento Imagine really will energize you. It'll give you some ideas, but you'll also see the level of enthusiasm around Magento. You'll see the level of enthusiasm around the community. You'll meet people. There's a ton of time. It's not just about talks. Most of the time, you'll see guys like me and TJ not even in the talks, just hanging out in the hallways, talking to people. You'll meet people. You might even meet some customers if you're lucky, but you'll definitely leave there with a completely different sense of what the Magento community and the entire Magento ecosystem actually is as a whole.
I already made him get Imagine tickets. I'm like, this is going to happen. You're going to have to do that.
They're paying me a commission.
My best friend lives in Miami. I was there 4 times last year, so I think I'm gonna have to come out to your Miami meetup at some point. Absolutely. I love it out there.
I love it too.
Yeah, I've been trying to get to one. It just hasn't worked out. I've been trying to plan a trip down just every time something comes up, or I just don't have the spare cycles to take what would be for me a 12-hour drive and then a meetup and then a 12-hour drive back. So I need to spend a few days, go to Disney or something while I'm down that way.
You're responsible for the MC of Magento Imagine. That came from, that all was bred in-house for sure.
Yeah, I think the MC of Magento Imagine bred that meetup. I think you're getting the credit a little backwards on that. But as far as the technical,
we were the guinea pigs, okay, we were the guinea pigs.
Okay, I get you. As far as technical goes, the in-person stuff is not near as technical. Mage Titans is a developer-focused event, so if you're going to skip one, skip that one. But I still think you could get a lot from it. There's a lot of networking. I don't care what anybody's saying on stage. I don't think I listened to a single talk last year. It's just about connecting with the people while I'm there. Same thing for Imagine. I literally went to 0 breakout sessions. I went to the keynotes, and I spent the rest of the time networking or in the exhibit hall. So Imagine has technical talks and non-technical talks. Meet Magento has a merchant track and a technical track. So the meetups are almost always, they may not be, even if they're talking about technical subjects, and they're usually, our meetups, we sponsor several, there are usually technical people in those meetups. It's usually developers that show up, but we're not sitting around slinging code, right? We're talking about high-level topics that anybody that showed up would understand. So don't be intimidated by it being a technical community.
When you go to the meetups and like Imagine the other events that you had mentioned, other than networking and getting my name out there and people starting to know who I am, what are some of the measurable goals that I can look at when attending those events?
Yeah, what you want to do is look at the agenda and see if there's something you need to learn, because as a salesperson, you need to start understanding the platform and how to do sales better. And the more you understand about the platform, the more you can position it versus someone's pain points and needs, the better off you're going to be. So in your position, that would be the biggest benefit outside of the networking. And also keep in mind that concrete measurable results are not something that's always easy to quantify with something like that. Like I went to PHP, or Sunshine PHP, first conference I ever went to of any type. That 2 years ago, January, I think it was, I went down in Miami. It's where I first met Ali. And I went because we were trying to get in the partner program, and I saw that Philip Jackson of Mage Talk was going to be speaking, and I saw that Ben Marks was going to be speaking. And so I'm like, neither one of them are responsible for me getting into the partner program, but let's those are high profile Magento community members that might provide me with some insight or something. Those are relationships I want to have. So I drove all the way, me and I had an employee at the time that was close by down there, and I took my COO with me, and we drove all the way to Miami, 12 hours, went to this conference, didn't care about the PHP topics. And that was about the time I was slowing down on development, and met, Philip and Ben, as nice as they can be, as open as they can be, as helpful as they can be. And I couldn't tell you at the time what the measurable return was from that, but we're in the partner program. Those relationships led to more relationships, led to more relationships, led to more relationships. And so I believe the impact of that one conference was profound, was, just irreplaceable in my business, but I can't pinpoint exactly what I got out of it.
Yeah. It's so when I think about Imagine, right? So one of the things that I think is important for a smaller agency is, and it's to a certain degree today, this is still true for us, right? I started out as sales, but also as an implementation manager and a solution specialist, right? So if you're a smaller agency, the more you know about the platform, the more you know about the functionality, the feature set, what it's capable of doing, what the best way to do something is, how to do something, and if you can and can accomplish it, gives you a level of intelligence that's necessary in the sales cycle from the aspect of having somebody that is a solution specialist, right? A solution specialist is very important, especially in the Magento sales cycle. Having somebody that on the phone that understands the platform, as intimately as possible, understands what it can do, understands what it can't do, what its pitfalls are, what its pros are, what its cons are. That's invaluable to the sales cycle, in my honest opinion. Now, if you're a smaller agency, your sales guy and your solution specialist most likely are one and of the same people. And in that particular case, things like Magento Imagine are really important, where you can kind of get in there and follow one of the tracks that really helps you understand what Magento is doing, where they see their product going, what features they're releasing, what features they've already released, what those features are capable of doing, and what problem they're solving for the merchant as a whole, right? So I think that has a lot of value. You can achieve some of that from even Mage Titans and also Meet Magento, any of the Meet Magento events. So for me, that's where a lot of the value comes from for Imagine, is understanding Magento as a solution.
Absolutely. Any other questions there, Alex? Any follow-ups to that? You want to, like I said, we can call it quits, or we can keep asking questions. That's pretty much how this is going to go.
I've got a call in 10 minutes. I've got to jump.
So we got 10 minutes left. Get your questions in. 10 minutes. I'm going to go to the farm. I got a few acres on the outskirts of town here, and I'm going to stay in a camper, and I'm going to unplug for 2.5 days. So I'm looking forward to that. So 10 minutes or less than 10 minutes.
At this stage where I'm at, how important is the website and just that sort of stuff, like my obviously social media presence, that's important. I'm obviously you TJ, you've become. I found you the other week, and it was just like a breath of fresh air finding you out there on social media. But how much effort should I put towards our website and the message on our website and blog content and stuff like that?
Have you seen my website?
Yes, I have. Your website, not much to it right now.
It's garbage, man. It's garbage, right? It's literally, and I'm working on a new version. And there's a reason we had a bunch of clients on there, some really large logos, some really great organizations, and we finished those projects and we terminated those relationships because they took it to their in-house team. And once you have a big brand and you in that relationship, they don't want you using their logos. So we took down our whole case study. We had these great videos shot. It was awesome. A good website helps. And the better you can get at positioning yourself as a Magento expert and, what you provide and touching on the client's pain points and all that stuff is great. It's not that important because most people are going to pick up the phone and talk to you. In all of my years of business, I'm trying to think. I'm thinking back. Let me give me a second here. Let's just say the last 2 years for sure. We have probably landed 3 or 4 websites that actually submitted the contact form on our website. Almost always it's somebody we wouldn't want to do business with, or they're lowballing. Almost always they're going to call or they're going to reach out through some other means. So it's important, but it's not anywhere close to the most important. You need to have a presence. You need to show that you are capable. As soon as you have resources available, I would highly recommend blogging. And blogging is one of those ways to give back. It's one of those ways, things like the Docker webinar that we dropped on here that we were talking about earlier are ways of gaining exposure and contributing to the community, which helps build your brand, which helps you find developers when you're looking for them. Do they want to work for some business they've never heard of or somebody that's active in the community. So blogs are that. They're also good for SEO. And the new website that I'm working on building in my spare time, whenever I have it, is really highly targeted at SEO and leveraging a lot of the content we're creating. But at your size, at your scale, I would focus on a little bit of SEO, but not put too much effort into the look and feel, right? As long as you touch on the pain points, that's what's important.
Yeah, we have done, we have invested in SEO and blogging. So it's good to hear that has some value.
Well, especially for smaller merchants, because most smaller merchants don't know anybody that knows Magento, and they don't know, what they don't know. So lots of times if they have Magento already, or if they're already looking at Magento, they'll go search for Magento Agency or Magento in Arizona or Magento in Phoenix. And you want to be there, all right? You want to be there when those show up, when those results show up. So it's not a bad thing, but it's not going to be this great, vast source of leads. It's not near as important as getting off the couch and pounding the pavement and building relationships.
I built my site 4 times over. I've spent a ton of money on the look and feel, on SEO, on blogging, and I've closed 0 deals for my website. Brazil, on the other hand, is a different story. I've closed like several, but in the United States, it's really hard to compete, even if you rank really well organically with some of the big boys that are dumping heavy dollars in AdWords for any combination of any keyword that has Magento, right? So, how valuable it is for me, it's been no, it hasn't been valuable at all. Relationships has been the most valuable.
You want it to be good enough to where someone hears your name through another channel, they look at your website, they don't think you're an idiot. That's pretty much how good you need your website to be. That's why mine's pretty simple. It's Magento focused. The new website we're doing it's going to have a little more content, a little more width to it, but it's probably even simpler. I'm going super simple, but I'm going for as fast as I can possibly get it to load. That's why it's taking a little while. I am literally optimizing every query, every every transition, every user interface, everything. I'm dialing it in as fast as I can possibly get it to help my SEO. But even then, I still don't expect it to lead to a significant amount of sales.
Yeah, for us, we threw out the last 3 websites, and finally I'm like, you know what, screw it. We're a Magento company. Build a Magento website. We're not selling it, but our website's actually built on Magento too.
When you guys were smaller and growing, how did you do any cold outreach to existing Magento merchants?
I was never any good at that. A friend of mine is an expert, Kalen Jordan, right? He's the king of cold outreach, warm outreach, whatever you want to call it, right? Outreach in general. I was never really good at it. And you know, another point about the website, I actually had hired GoodLinks before GoodLinks closed down. Remember Kalen's venture,
Yeah.
GoodLinks? And I paid GoodLinks a good amount of money for 12 months, and then he figured it wasn't working. He wasn't seeing results. He shut the company down. And then right after he shut the company down, I was ranking like #1 or #2 for several Magento keywords, like Magento services and a number of other things. I still never closed any deals. But sorry, cold outreach never worked for me. Never got into it. Couldn't figure it out.
Yeah, you know, I'm with you on there. Cold outreach is not something we have traditionally done. It's not something that works ridiculously well, so you've got to do it at scale. So it has to be someone's full-time job. If you're just hard up, you know, if your quarter's coming to a close and you need to make a sale, do what it takes. But you're going to get much quicker, much better fruits by building relationships. So we're really just now getting to where we're doing cold outreach. We've hired someone full-time to do that kind of work, that is much more hard-headed than I am, and is willing to, you know, to just beat his head against the wall for hours and days to get those leads mined up. So and it, you know, I hate doing it. I hate calling somebody and interrupting them. Hell, even if they're a prospect and I'm trying to follow up with them, I don't want to just call and interrupt their day. And that's, you know, that's my problem. But I just haven't seen anybody at your size do cold outreach successfully, because it does take so much volume, because there's so many rejections.
You know, another thing about cold outreach, just to let you know, because I'm not going to name any names, but there's some Magento agencies that do cold outreach really well. And if you actually look at the content matter of their cold outreach, it's pretty solid, right? You know, they're giving you actionable results. They've taken time to really have a subject matter expert go through your site, whether it's from a UI perspective, a performance perspective, you know, a search visibility perspective, and give you real issues, real actionable results, and give you a presentation within that cold outreach. I think that type of cold outreach probably works really, really well, but you need to have the resources to be able to do it. And it's significant.
Yeah, you got to be of a decent size to pull that off. You've got to be, you know, because I mean, hell, just having somebody go through and generate those reports, you know, there's certain things you can automate, but even automation takes effort. So I know you've got to go, Ali. So I think I'm going to call the stream. Hopefully we've provided some useful information to everyone out there. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. Look forward to seeing you on the next one. Should have another live stream next Friday. I'm trying to get the deity PWA theme folks on. We'll see. They tentatively see, I've had too much alcohol. Tentatively have accepted, and hopefully we can pull together the details of that. Any other parting words from you guys?
Thanks a lot for having me on here, TJ. I really appreciate it, and thank you for your time, Ali.
Thanks, man. You know, you'll be surprised, and get involved with the community, and you'll be shocked at what it's capable of doing for you.
Yeah, I look forward to meeting you guys in person at the latest at Imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. That's going to be fun. Tap me on the shoulder if I walk by you. You know, we always have a good time and Imagine. Make sure you sleep the week before. really, really well, because the party, there's two types of people at Imagine. There's people who come early and are early for everything and they go to bed, and there are people who stay out late. And I'm usually one of the few people who's running with both groups.
We need to figure out our bar tab situation ahead of time this year, though.
We're not going to do that anymore. We had a situation last year where a bunch of people showed up, drank, left, and then they come over to give the bill, and it's like, hey, the
people looking at me, and I'm looking at TJ. TJ's looking at Eric.
Like, we only had like one drink. I had one drink. Like, I didn't, they were like 10 people came and left. Luckily, hosting companies make a lot of money, man. Luckily, hosting companies make a lot of money. That's all I can say. But we'll introduce you around.
Drinks on Mage Mojo at Center Bar.
Yeah. Pair us all up, man. If you're ever lost or you just want something to do, the conference is not going on, hit Parasol up. It's in the front of the wind. That's where we'll be pretty much most of every night. All right, guys. Well, I'm going to call it quits.
Have a good day.
It's been fun, and we'll see you guys next week on the live stream.